I'm really doing something wrong. Watching every move I'm making, loving every step I take, waiting for the moment when the feeling starts to break.
Okay, thank you everyone for making it back. Thank you. We're about to get started. So first of all, give yourself a big round of applause for being back on time. Thank you so much. All right. So we have many people who are going to be kind of finding their way in because they're out networking and so on. But while you're here, I'm going to be sharing with you a little story which is going to lead us into our Changemaker Forum. I'm about to invite up a number of people who are right here in London, right here in England, that are navigating the waves themselves within their business that we're going to be able to learn from, hear from, and at the same time ask questions to. And what I'm going to do is just take you back a few years and give you a tale of two Simons. Now, by the way, if anyone got disconnected from the internet, make a note of this, write it down somewhere, so I won't be putting it up all the time through. Make a note on your workbook that is the password. There's been lots of tweeting and people posting, so make sure you are actively using Twitter to connect with others as well. Connect to my YouTube page as well if you'd like more videos and so on. And we're going to be, while we're going through this, there's going to be a live cast showing on my YouTube channel as well, where people are going to be tuning in from around the world for that as well. So just know that's going to be happening on the YouTube channel. But I wanted to share this. I wanted to share something that happened here. I think it was, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 years ago. I think it was maybe 3 years ago. We had Simon Dixon, who came up as a change maker, and at that point he had a blog which was talking about kind of the ills and woes of the financial industry. And off the back of that, he set up a crowdfunding platform, which got recognized here in the UK. Simon Zucchi, who is one of our change makers, is going to join us on stage. His whole focus had been on creating an property investment network. So everything that was in educating on property, he had a property investors network going. But he also heard about some of the things we're going to be talking about this afternoon and said, I want to get onto one of these waves. And so he also chose the crowdfunding wave. Now, to begin with, again, Simon, his background wasn't technology or anything like that. So he waited for Simon Dixon to get going. Simon Dixon created this here, which is called banktothefuture.com, which Richard Branson then endorsed. This all happened within 18 months of fast forward. Off the back of this, Simon then used Bank to the Future to basically test out whether there was an interest in the first crowd-funded property site, which he called Crowd Property Limited. Looked to raise £150,000, raised £159,000, and off the back of that said, well, this works. And so from there, launched just this last week, or in the last couple of weeks, this site, Crowd Property, and as you can see there, it's got news articles, Crowd Property targets £20 million in its first year, that this is all just taken off now, and it's really birthed through these events and basically like spurring not just the thinking, but also getting the right connections to make things happen as well. So a perfect example of the kind of stories that I'll be sharing more about this afternoon of what happens when we start taking action on the different ways we're talking about. So let's look at who we have joining us on stage right now. Well, I've just mentioned Simon. So Simon Zucchi is going to be joining us in a moment on stage. If you look at the back of your sheet that you have here, you'll see the biographies on each of the 4 people here. I'm kind of going backwards here. We've got Darryl Woodhouse. His whole background has been in mentoring. So he's been mentoring specifically entrepreneurs. There's been a lot of shift and change on the number of mentors available to entrepreneurs here in England in the last couple of years, as I'm sure you know. So he's been recognized in a number of different ways. Leadingthought.co is his website. He's going to be sharing his experience working with entrepreneurs in a whole series of different industries. Shah Wasman also has worked with many entrepreneurs, and she set up an organization called Smarter.com, which had partnerships with different banks. It's grown to become a leading entrepreneur portal right here in the UK, where you can get startup loans and you can get the learning that you need to be successful as an entrepreneur. She's going to be sharing her experience, and she's actually evolved from actually building that and growing that into such a successful platform to then having a best-selling book. As you see here, she has a book called Stop Talking and Start Doing, and that has been a best-selling book here in the UK for 14 months in a row, and has actually hit all sorts of records as a result of the way she marketed it and the way she has kept up at the top there. As you see, Institute of Directors voted her as one of the most connected women in the UK. And the last time I met Shah was actually in New Orleans in America, because she's been connecting to many of the same groups that I'm connected with out there as well. And then we have Michael Clark, who introduced me here this morning. And I knew Michael when he was living in Australia, and seeing him go from Australia, coming out here, working together with a number of the people on the event side here in England, in London, and then from that, now having a Europe-wide business, as he has right now, sharing with people how to go about using LinkedIn. So he has Really Connect, which is the world's first certified LinkedIn training company, which has now grown to having hundreds of corporate clients all over the world. And his best-selling book, How to Really Use LinkedIn, is in partnership with a number of authors who are actually based in Europe, who he met through this same network that we have been building over these last 10 years that you're now a part of as well. So you can get to him at reallyconnect.com as well. So these are 4 people who have got different areas of expertise, but are all going through the same entrepreneurial journey that you and I are going on. Can we give them a big round of applause and invite them on stage? All right, guys, come on up, come on up. All right. Okay, keep the applause going, keep it going, woohoo! Welcome to my office, welcome to my office. Come join, grab a seat. Welcome, Simon. Hey, Shah. Hey, Shah. Okay, all right, grab a seat. You get the sofa. Okay, awesome. All right, so here we all are. And here's what's going to happen. I'm going to be inviting I'm just going to be asking a number of questions. We're going to have a conversation, and then you're going to have a chance to ask some questions in a little bit as well. Let me start with you, Simon. Would you like to just add to anything from the journey that I was just sharing in terms of the way you changed your thinking and how it's evolved into what you're growing right now? And what I mean, in that whole process, what it is you've seen, because there are property investors here as well, what have you've seen within the whole industry, which is why you chose to go down this route?
So it was really interesting. I was here 2 years ago, and you were talking about crowd property as one of the waves. And I thought, what the hell's crowd property? Crowdfunding kind of thing, how can you do that? And it's really interesting about looking upstream and seeing how the market's changing. And are there any property investors in the room? Show of hands. Keep your hand up if you've had difficulty with banks. Yeah, that's everybody. So it's a pretty common problem.
Yeah.
And I'm quite experienced. I'm doing bigger deals myself, and I was experiencing difficulty getting money from banks, and bridging's there, but it's expensive. So I thought, well, why not do something like crowdfunding, where anyone who's got £500 or more can benefit from a great return on their money. So it's solving that problem. And who's got money in the bank, not very happy with the bank? That's everyone else who's not an investor. So there you go. You put the two together, and that's the idea. And 2 years later, we just launched last week.
Yeah.
So here it is.
Give a round of applause for launching last week. That's pretty awesome. Very cool. Mike, I'm going to come over to you, Mike. With the way that you evolved your company, what was the one, when you came to England, did you have any idea that's what you would be doing? And what was it that spurred you to get involved? Was it like a highlight, or was it like a low point? Or what was it that spurred you at that point to get involved with the whole team that you're now working with?
Yeah, well, no, is to answer the first question, no, I had no idea that this is what I would be doing.
Right. Yeah.
But what changed is that, without going too much in the background, we used to run a lot of events, and then that's where we launched Roger over here about 8 years ago, and then when I stepped out to do my own thing to take my sales and marketing expertise to market, I then realised that I was promoting myself as sales and sales training, and I realised I was up against a lot of people. And a lot of people had experience in different areas, and then I realised that it was actually going to your Wealth Dynamics Master Program in Bali just over 3 years ago, just under 3 years ago actually, where you said to me, you asked this question, you said, tell me about your most successful client. And I said, well, it's a client who I've been working with for a number of years now, and I've gained ownership into the company. And you said, well, why don't you do more of that? I went, there's a good idea. And that's when I met Bert, my business partner at the time, and he told me he had the world's first certified LinkedIn training company.
Was Bert there at the...
Yeah, Bert was in... He was there by accident.
He was there on holiday or something, right?
No, he was there because his workshop that he went to was cancelled and he wasn't told about it.
Oh.
And so he flew from Belgium to Bali. And he was there because...
So he hung out there, and then you met him at that. And
yeah.
That's
and then, so we got together, and then next thing I said, well, do you have plans to expand? He said yes. And as soon as he said, he sort of shared with me what they're doing in the corporate marketplace and with small business owners, and about how LinkedIn has disrupted the business community massively, I went, that's got massive potential. And LinkedIn, I don't know if anyone knows the growth rates of it, between 2003 to 2011, it went from 0 to 110 million users. Since 2011 till now, it's gone to 313 million users. It's reached its tipping point, and it's now expanded beyond recruitment into sales and marketing and disrupting the market. So, yeah, we're now growing a team across Europe.
That's awesome. That's very cool. All right. Thank you. Shah, I'm going to come to you, Shah, because you've also built a pretty awesome network here in the UK. But I'm going to ask you a different question, which is, in all the success and great things that have happened, what has been like one of the toughest things that's happened that you weren't expecting, or that kind of knocked you sideways? What happened, and what did you do about it?
Okay, that's pretty easy. Let me share two very quick things. I'll share my biggest business mistake that I ever made, which was that I turned down the CEO role of a company called Bebo. Does anybody remember that name? Okay, so I turned it down with a 5% equity stake. And 18 months later, does anybody remember how much they were sold for? $850 million. Huh. So, it still pains me. Oh. I say that sometimes you have good decisions and sometimes you have bad decisions.
But on that point, that's the biggest thing that's now grown today is out of cost, is opportunity cost, right? It's like, in the past, it's like things didn't really grow that much. So there was like, what am I going to lose if I like don't do something? It's like not that much, but what do I lose of what I have that I'm holding on to? So, we always think of a cost being losing something from the past as opposed to realizing the biggest cost of what we're losing from the future, which is exactly that. It's the opportunity cost of not taking something because you can spot the wave.
Yeah, absolutely. But an interesting story came out of it, which answers your key question, which is, what's the worst thing that's happened in business and how did I deal with it? So I came up with the idea for Smarter at the beginning of 2008. So for those of you who don't know, smarter.com is the UK's largest online resource for entrepreneurs and small businesses. We help over 500,000 small businesses every month. So, we are pretty huge in terms of our scale and our reach. But that could all very easily have not happened, because in 2008, we raised £3 million of venture capital, primarily from high net worth individuals. And 2 weeks before we signed all the legal documents, the banks collapsed. And as a result, we lost 2/3 of our investment. And in that moment, two things happened. Three things probably. One, we decided that, we're not going to give in. What we're going to do is we're going to cut our cloth accordingly, pivot, change our business model according to the amount of money we can actually raise. That was the first thing. The second thing was we had to get really smart. And what we did was we actually went out and on the spur, we literally pivoted overnight and started going out and pitching for sponsorship. And bearing in mind Chatham House rules here, we raised £1 million in sponsorship revenue from one of the big banks. But the third thing is, and it links back into my first story, my worst business mistake, which was turning down the CEO role of Bebo, was that I went to Michael Birch, who was the founder of Bebo, and he cornerstoned the rest of the investment. And what that means is that he stepped in and said, okay, I know you don't want to come and work with us, but one of the things I truly believe in, my biggest lesson in life and in business, is that every single thing that we do is about how we treat people. It's about our relationships. So Roger mentioned that the last time we saw each other was in New Orleans at Yannick Silver's event, who is a joint friend of ours. So even though I turned down the role at Bebo, I maintained the friendship. I maintained the relationships. For me, collaboration and relationships are everything. And because I did that, when my back was against a wall and we'd lost 2/3 of our investment, Michael Birch stepped in and saved the day. So sometimes you can turn those bad situations around. Not always, but most of the time.
Very cool. Awesome. Darryl, let me ask you, same question, which is around tough times. What would have been for you, and how have you used that in the way that you're even advising companies today, or entrepreneurs today?
Thanks, Roger. So for me, tough times is probably around people. And it happened to me in the corporate world, where I was working for a couple of large corporates. I won't say what sector they're from. They're not our favourite sector. There's a hint. It does rhyme with banking. Thanks, Sean. I worked up into a national position from switching across two different banks, but very much working in supporting the business sector. So I learned a lot about business through there. Saw about how companies need lots of help and support, and sometimes people think there's lots of support out there. Maybe there is, but sometimes it's actually about the quality of the support and finding the right quality support at the right time. So that was where I founded Advantage 2.5 years ago. We're up to 2 different companies in the group now, 32 in the team, and we've got a strong national presence. We've grown through partnerships and building a really strong team internally, coupled with a really strong set of suppliers. So people is so important, not just getting the right customers, but getting the right colleagues, and not trying to employ everyone at once as well. So you can grow in a lean way. You don't always have to have large amounts of funding. Sometimes you can't get that funding as well. So when you can't get that funding, like we couldn't in our first year, after a couple of attempts, we had to try and think, okay, well, what can we do sort of lean ways? So we then started doing skill swaps with other suppliers. So we had a web design company do our first website, and we traded some hours of coaching to help them grow their business. And we did other skill swaps as well. Now we pay for all the services that we hire for our business because we've grown and we have the cash flow now. by being creative in people and not just thinking about your employees, but as I said, using the best of freelancers, outsourcers, and also business partners as well. So when I started Advantage, tried to find a good business partner. It took me a while. Had trust issues, reliability issues with the people that I looked at.
What made you decide you needed a business partner?
Looking at successful business people like Shah, Roger, sat beside me, you can't do it on your own. So yes, you need a team beneath you and alongside you, but you also need a business partner. There's very few CEOs of large companies that don't have equity partners around them, good, reliable people that are actually friends they can trust, and they complement the skill sets. So that's why we also love the talent dynamics and the wealth dynamics as well. And
What would you say to everyone? I mean, given your experience, did you actually have a bad experience with someone where you actually got into a partnership and then it went pear-shaped?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's about not having maybe not having the timings right. Could be for you or for the other party, or maybe it's about values and personality. If your goals and your ambitions aren't aligned, then it's just not going to work. So when we learnt that in the first sort of year, after a couple of failed partnerships, we then really focused on making sure we focus on the relationship first, and then the timing. So the timing's right for both of us. Having a white canvas approach to partnerships. What do they want? What do you want? How can you align those? And don't try and make them align if it just isn't going to work. If there isn't a natural fit, park it, stay in touch, and try again in the future. So
this is an interesting theme that's coming up here, and I think this is one of the most fascinating things. Like, as technology grows, our ability to get on with other people becomes more important than ever, right? It's like everyone's talking about partnerships, and we teach this at iLab in Bali, which is like, if you want to have a remote business, the most important skill is not having all the systems and so on. The most important skill is being able to motivate people from afar, or to have people that actually want to be working with you when you're not there because you're out doing something else, because you're aligned to the mission or where you're heading. And I want to come back to Simon on that point, because you've just set up this whole crowdfunding platform, but your entire business, or at least a large part of what you've been doing, has been the way you've set up the Property Investors Network. Do you want to share with everyone just like how many different groups are meeting up every month, and what you've seen is the biggest problem you've had to overcome with how you keep the quality with that kind of a network?
So we have a network around the country of Property Investor Network meetings called PIN meetings. And this month, September, we have 47 meetings happening all over the country every single month.
All different cities, right?
All different cities, yeah. Well, we have about 4 or 5 in London, but generally all around the country. And when we first started, I started it up because when I was in about 2003, I'd left my work, I'd replaced my income from my property, which is great. But I felt really lonely because I had about 8 or 9 properties at that time, and no one around me knew what I was going through. It was a really difficult time. And I'd learned from Tony Robbins about the importance of environment and getting people around you. So I thought, well, I want to find a group, and there wasn't one. So as a creator, I thought, well, I'll start one. And so I did that. And then in that group, it was supposed to be a mutually sharing thing with peers. But people said to me, Simon, how come you don't have to work? And I said, no, I do my property, I do work. They said, no, you don't go to work. How come you can do that? So I explained my story, and that's when my passion was actually speaking and sharing what I'd done. And so it started to grow, and started to run a meeting in Birmingham, then London and Bristol and Manchester. And I actually used to host all of them. And then I got to the point that most business owners get to, you think, Shasta, you just can't do it all on your own. You've got to expand. So some people who'd come and done some training with me, who had been successful, said, well, I don't want to come all the way to Birmingham. Can I start a meeting in Leeds? So we empowered them to start that meeting. We have a format that we like to run the meeting along. And the idea is each month people come along, and I'm not there. So there's a host who runs it, and then we have people who come along, share about their story and how they invest and expert strategies. It's not really selling, it's a support environment. And it's grown organically, and we've had an exponential effect the last few years. And that's because things take a little bit of time to get going. And we're a classic overnight success that's taken 10 years. And I think a problem with many entrepreneurs, especially being a creator, we sometimes get bored and we stop doing it too quickly. So perseverance and getting some really good people. And we've had some partnerships with people who haven't quite been right. And as Dan said, it's all about the values and the alignment of those values. And then it's about empowering them. So there's a structure within which we want them to work. We want them to be their own personality. And then they take it on and they get so much out of hosting a meeting that actually they're really keen and they become part of the community and the family. And like you said earlier, it's not a list, it's a community. And that community spirit that everyone supports each other is something that people don't really have in the outside world. And when people come into that environment, they think, is this a cult? What's going on here? But it is actually just everyone wants to help each other, and people realise by helping each other, you achieve more yourself. So it's interesting that at first, a little seed of an idea. I never had an ambition to have this big network. It kind of just grew, and sometimes it feels a bit like a big monster that I've created. But having great people who are also passionate about it and having them bought into it, and they're not doing it for, they earn some money out of it, that's not why they're doing it. And I think that's a big mistake people make, in that you think you can always just pay someone to do it, and that's the wrong way. You've got to get people who are really passionate, who want to move forward.
And in terms of qualifying people in, like is there a pretty stringent process of someone
to be a host? They've got to have done our training, because obviously one of the reasons we do want people to come to the environment, all these other people who've done really well from our training think, well, why don't I go and do that? So they have to have done our training, they have to have done really well, then we teach them how to run the meeting. So there's, and actually we're all getting together on Monday, so every 3 or 4 months we get together, a bit of a community, it's a bit like a party really. We all catch up with each other and everyone knows each other, and we have a great time, and making things fun is also really important. So there are criteria to be a host as well.
Got it. Awesome. Cool. So this whole idea that as you grow something, that here becomes a challenge, because you're always going to have growing pains. But what happens when you start evolving and looking internationally? So, Mike, let me ask you, by being in different countries, like being all over Europe, like what have you seen as being the biggest challenge of doing that? But also, what's been like the biggest benefit of doing that?
Yeah, I had a chuckle then, because the biggest challenge, you mentioned something before about having a remote team. You know, we've got 10 people full-time, we've got 18 trainers. We deliver training in 9 different languages. I've got a team who's spread across, I think it's 4 or 5 countries. We actually have a quarterly team meetings, and we have half of them dialing in. We have laptops there. We have a bit of a selfie, which is full of laptops. It's quite funny. But obviously you guys didn't find it funny. I thought it was. But yeah, I mean, language is one of the obvious ones in Europe, and that's really what we've been gearing up for, is that at the bigger business end of the market, a lot of LinkedIn particularly is struggling with how do you actually roll out training across multi-languages, and so a multinational company, they've got people in 5 different time zones and 7 different languages. How do they deal with that? We've been gearing up to be the one-stop shop for that. You know, seeing where the market is going with that. So, I think overall there's an art to growing a remote team. I mean, who here actually has team members that are in a different country? I mean, so there's a few here, and you know, and it is challenging at times. You know, like sometimes I just shake my fist and just say, I want to get everyone around a table and just, you know, eyeball each other and be able to have those conversations and stick up one board and everyone can see it. So it's got a different set of challenges, a different set of skills that you need to develop. And, you know, I mean... What's been a big benefit? Like, what have you found? Wow, I'm actually really happy that I've got this different perspective by having a kind of a multinational feel, compared to if you were just doing it in like London or Australia. What would you say is the benefit of it? One of the real benefits is seeing how the market is evolved in different regions. Right. So for example, the LinkedIn activity is per capita in the Netherlands region is the most active by far. And so you can learn from what's happened there and apply it in a market over here. Likewise, we're launching soon in Africa, so we're going to be going down where South Africa is going to be a hub down there. And so, you know, when we did some initial research down there, we're looking at it, and the questions that people were asking were, you know, about where we were 4 years ago. And LinkedIn is at a different life cycle curve, and it's reached the tipping point here. It's growing by about 1 million people a quarter. So we can take the lessons of what we learned here, and then we can apply it in a different region based on where we know they are. So we know exactly the type of training that needs to be applied, the type of thinking, and the questions that they're going to be asking. So when it comes to marketing, which is so critical to understand what are your clients thinking, what are your prospects thinking, what are the words they would use, well, one of the key benefits is that we know that almost to an extent. It needs to be culturally defined, but we can understand where they're at and apply it. That's a really interesting point, and it's a really important point that
like a lot of people say, is time travel possible? But what you're talking about is time travel. And that is exactly what happens because there's different economies and industries. Like property is like that all the time. You know, it's like if you realize how easy it is to do business globally or allows you to go from one place to another, you can like go, oh, this place is clearly ahead. I'm going to go travel there. I'm going to learn what's going on there. And then I'm going to bring that back. You know, Shah, I mean, like we met in America, and I know you're involved in all sorts of things there. Do you want to share with everyone why that is? And when it comes to like, you know, getting in the right environment, the right mastermind, the right mentoring, and so on, why you do that, and how it impacts what your decisions are.
Absolutely. I think it's pivotal to not just success, but to your happiness. So I liken business to a relay race. In my view, there's 4 legs to the relay race, very similar to your wealth dynamics profile. I'm awesome at the startup, and I'm pretty damn good at the exit, but I don't really do the 2 bits in the middle very well. So as Roger mentioned, I wrote a book in 2012 called Stop Talking, Start Doing. It was a runaway success, and that opened up a whole new set of doors to me, primarily to the States. It was my first book, but we sold like 70,000 copies, which for the UK is unheard of. I got offers from Penguin, from Random House, from all these, all the big publishers. And I don't say that to impress you, but I say it to impress upon you what is actually possible. Because so many people have... we end up on career paths that we think we should be on because somebody else told us that's what we should do, or because we happen to be good at something. But very similarly to Simon, what I realized at some point last year was that what I really enjoyed most was actually sharing my knowledge and teaching. I got the greatest joy from empowering other business owners to see their full potential. And I realized that if I was going to do that, then I wanted to learn from the best. So I surround myself, like Roger does, with some pretty damn awesome people. And I got fortunate because of my book. Like one day I woke up and I just said, you know what, I keep talking about writing this book. Actually, I'm just going to go and stop talking and start writing it. And that opened up a door to a whole new space in the States. And what I've learned from that, particularly around online training in this space, whether you're teaching LinkedIn, whether you're teaching business, whether you're teaching property, whether you're teaching people how to create a best-selling book, whether you're doing whatever it is that you're doing, I think the future is delivering that in an online environment combined with offline workshops, combined with webinars, combined with bringing in outside external experts. And currently the UK is, I think, about 4 years behind the US. So when I look to the US, when I think about launching my products, I don't look at what's happening here. I look at the US, and I don't just look at the US. I think, who is the best? Who is absolutely kicking it in the US? And then that's where I set my benchmark, because you're absolutely right. In all these scenarios, there will be some countries that are ahead of us that we can learn from and then bring that information back. And equally, we will be ahead of other countries, which means that you can go into those countries with the wealth of knowledge, expertise, and client base that you already have here, and actually leverage that in a much shorter space of time. So for me, I'm all about less is more. How can we achieve more by doing less? How can we get really focused? And there is no question, your inner core, your support network is your value. For me, it's not my properties or my investments or my business. My support network is without a doubt my most valuable commodity.
That's great. And when you go and find them, I mean, I know this because I do the same. I look and say, who's the best? And when you find the people who are the best or the ones who are upstream, they all know the others. And it's always a really small group that's doing it.
It's a tiny group.
It's a really small, yeah.
And if you pay it forward, like I know that's really important for all of us here, is that it's amazing how people will help you. So some of our mutual connections, when I've seen like who's upstream from me, and I've been talking to people, they go, okay, I know that person, let me just hook you up. I'm like, oh, cool, thanks. And actually, when you live your life and you run your business with morals and principles and ethics, when you're authentic, when you really truly believe in what you're doing and why you're doing it, why you're doing it to serve your customers, if that's why you're doing it, if you're doing it from a real heart-centered place, and I don't say that in any woo-woo kind of way, I just mean that if you're really genuine about what you're doing, people will always volunteer to help you. The one thing that we're quite bad in the UK about is asking for that help, right? That's what we need to get better at. The reason I'm pretty well class at asking for help is despite my accent, I'm actually American.
Are you?
I am.
You're American?
I was born in California, yeah. I grew up there till I was 11, and apologies to any Americans in the audience, but thank God I lost my accent.
Okay, so here's the thing. I mean, we're super lucky here because, like, if you wanted to see any of the individuals on stage, you'd have to go a long way or, be wherever they happen to be. They're all here. This is a great opportunity right now to be asking questions. Earlier today, we were going through, well, what kind of size question do you have? What would be that $1 million or £10 million or whatever, or 100 million, 100,000 pound question that you would have? So here's the thing. If you could ask a question right now of either an individual who's up here as one of the change makers or kind of a general question, what would that be? I'm going to give you, because I know some people are already quick thinkers, got questions. Others are like, I don't know yet. I'm going to give you all a chance to actually just come up with a question, whatever it happens to be. Turn to the person next to you. I'm going to give you a minute. Say, well, here's what my question would be, and here's who it would be to that would really be of value to me, and hear what they have to say to you as well. Then we'll take a couple of those questions. So go ahead, have a conversation.
So I think we should just put on another event, house to house. That's what I think we should do. I'm going to invite Roger in out there. That'd be quite interesting. I think that would give my little mastermind with Kevin and Andy. It's quite interesting. So Andrew Reynolds. Andrew's like a really good friend of mine for like the last 10 years. Like, he's my friend. I wouldn't believe that. Yeah, that's what he tells me. So he's my friend as opposed to... Yeah. In fact, when they asked me to ask whatever
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So let me ask, and this is an important thing, we're only going to be able to answer some questions. Obviously, the ones we're going to answer are the ones that get asked. Hands up who has a question you'd like to ask.
Roger, can I just say there's a lady at the back who's now standing up. She put her hand up within about, I don't know, I think you'd taken half a breath.
Okay,
so
we're going to go.
I just wanted to recognize I saw her.
We're going to start right there on the very back table. Do you want to come forward a little bit so everyone can see you as well? And when you ask a question, start with introducing yourself, just who you are, and then who you're directing the question to. If an individual or if it's a general one, you can say that too. And then your question. Thank you. And your name is?
My name is Penny Sophocles, and I run a company called Corporate Alchemy.
Penny. So okay, can we give Penny a round of applause for us to be
Penny.
I've just written a book, and I have a question for Shah, which is, what are the 3 key things that you did that made Random House and Penguin and all the others want your book?
I sold a huge amount of copies.
Right. But before you
now, would you
had
like
them,
to know how I did that?
Yes.
Okay. So how I did it was I asked for. It's like the chicken and egg story. So I don't know whether you've gone published or self-published. I'm a big believer in going published because I truly believe that's where you get the distribution. Yeah. But that's another story. So just to be really clear on how I did it. I used my lowest hanging fruit. I'm very fortunate. I have worked with some incredibly amazing people. I spent 5 years working with James Dyson from his kitchen table. Nobody knew who he was. I built the Dyson brand. He wrote the foreword to my book. I knew him, so I leveraged that. I'd also worked with Sir Ranulph Fiennes, and I leveraged that. So what I did was I approached Seth Godin, who I did not know. I had no connection with whatsoever, but you can find Seth's email quite quickly if you look for it, like most people, because what we think is we think that this person is so far out there they're unattainable. So what you have to start with is your lowest hanging fruit. How can you join those dots to get what you want? And usually there's a way. So what I did was I emailed Seth, and I said, "Hi, Seth, before you throw me in the trash can," because I'd put the subject matter, front cover blurb, recommendation required with a smiley face, something really stupid. But I said, before you throw me in the trash can, because I know you get thousands of these a week, I thought you'd like to know what the world's greatest living inventor, Sir James Dyson, thinks of my book. Then I thought you might like to know what the world's greatest living explorer, Sir Ranulph Fiennes, thinks of my book. However, all I want to know is what does the world's greatest living marketeer think of my book? tell you, a combination of flattery and humor and not taking yourself too seriously, but also owning your shit and believing in yourself will take you everywhere you ever want to go. I got a reply in 2 minutes. So I now had a front cover blurb from Seth Godin. I had a quote from James Dyson, from Ranulph Fiennes. I got a publishing deal. I was absolutely clear. If you look at my book, you'll see that it changed the genre for how books have been written in that space. It wasn't a tome, it wasn't War and Peace, it was a short book. I believe in what I call inhalable content. So you have to be able to pick it up and read it on a train or on a plane to Europe. And it has to give you value from the first page. I also believe that we learn best when we can associate an image with a message. So there's lots of visuals throughout the book. It looked different. It had strong imagery on the front of it. But ultimately, it came down to two things from that point. So that all happened before the book was launched. But it came down to two things after that. The first one was I decided not to pay any attention whatsoever to Amazon because, quite frankly, nobody knew me. Nobody knew I was an author. Why would anybody go on Amazon and look for me as an author? You might do that today because I'm sat here and I've told you, but prior to that, nobody was going to search for me. So what I did do was I focused on what I could control, which I truly believe in pretty much every aspect of your life, that's the best thing to do. You can't control other people, so why not control ourselves and the bits that we can do? So I focused on W.H. Smith's Travel, which is actually where they sell more books than anywhere else. I put all my energies and efforts. I focused. I did less and I created more. I didn't spread myself too thinly. I was absolutely laser sharp focused on one thing. I made W.H. Smith's Travel, got to number 1, stayed there, and it became like a dream. You know, it was a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year. It was insane. And, you know, like Roger asked me to start with what's your biggest business lesson, like what went wrong. This was probably, if I'm being honest, one of the very, very few times, maybe I can count 3 times in my life, where something in business has gone so fast I couldn't keep up with it. So instead of trying to push a rock up a hill, I was trying to chase it down the hill, make sure I didn't miss out on any opportunities. So I focused on one area of marketing. That's the key thing. And the second thing, and this sounds really stupid, I created good content that people wanted to recommend to other people, because even with great quotes and testimonials and great marketing, if people don't recommend it to each other, you're still only going to have a short lifespan with your book. So it's a formula. I truly believe it is. I think, you know, if anybody wants to write a book, there are steps that you can take to do it.
Very cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Round of applause. Good answer. Awesome. Okay, another question. We had a hand up over here. Not hand up. Okay, lady over here. We're going to see if we can navigate through with the microphone. It's coming your way. Right here on the front table here. Awesome. Thanks. And your name is?
I'm Vanessa.
Vanessa. Can we give Vanessa a round of applause? All right.
Vanessa.
Just picking up on the theme that many of you spoke about, which is partnerships and the importance of those partnerships, how you've built them and how you've managed them, depending on what the business is that you're building at the time. I'd like to know your tips, basically, for how you built that rapport with people, how you built the relationships, short, concise versions, and what you're calling parking relationships in a good way so that you can come back to them, because you've all sort of mentioned the same thing. So top tips, I'm hoping that will help everyone. Thanks.
Okay, we'll take a couple of tips on that. Who, you want to go for it, Darryl?
I'll go first on that one. No, really good question, that. Firstly, I think you have to start small. So in our first year of trading, we tried to go really big with some of the partnerships we aspired to form, and surprise, surprise, some of them wouldn't talk to us, despite some of our other attempts at influencing and contact. So start smaller, start with smaller companies, smaller partnerships, get those working, build some momentum, and then you move up to the next size, so maybe it's medium partnerships and so on. And you know, we're over 2.5 years going now, and just formed our first global large corporate partnership a couple of weeks ago. So you know, we're there, and now that we've got the first one, we're expecting more will quickly follow. Yeah, start small. And in terms of car parking, I do use that phrase a lot, probably too much, my team would say. Again, just be really open with people at the start. Find some common ground. If there isn't any common ground, you're probably going to try and fit a square peg in a round hole. So might not be right. Maybe move on to the next one, find that common ground, and then be honest about timings and also capability and capacity. Sometimes a bigger fish is concerned about how well you might serve their customers. So you've got to have that proven concept and the credibility as well as the reputation and the relationships. So there's many factors, and try and think about what's going through the mind of the other party and try and tick that off, and make sure it works for both people as well. So you've got to be flexible and accommodating.
I'll be really quick, I promise. So I did the opposite. That's why I wanted to step in. I dreamed really, really, without swearing, effing big when I started Smart, because my back was against a wall. And if I didn't find a big partner, we were going to disappear. So do you know what? Sometimes it's amazing what happens when you have nothing to lose. So I decided, actually, I want to stand on the shoulders of giants. So I reached out and created connections with... We currently work with 5 of the top 6 banks in the UK. It has its blessings and it has its curses. So as long as you really own your power, just 3 things I would say to you. When you go into negotiations to create a partnership, whether they're big or small, make sure you turn up at that meeting believing that you're an equal, because they may be 10 times, 100 times bigger than you. But if you're in the room, there's a reason that they need you in the room. Remember that and own it. The best tip I can give you when you're talking about partnerships, and this is genuinely something that I apply. If you're going to hire someone, ask yourself a really simple question. Would you invite them into your home for dinner? Your home, not a restaurant. If you hesitate, don't hire them. If you want to go into partnership with anyone, partnership is like a marriage, whether it's short-term or long-term. It's much more than just hiring someone. So look at your potential partner and ask yourself, would you invite this person or these people into your home for a weekend? If you hesitate, go find somebody who you'd love to welcome into your home with open arms, because partnerships are all about trust, because things don't always work out. And in those moments when things don't work out, you need to be in partnership with somebody that you trust. It might sound trite and not very businesslike, but it's a rule that I use and it works very well for me.
Yeah, great advice there. I've had some partnerships that worked really well and some that haven't worked so well. And I think getting that clarity on that, do you like the people? Do you have similar values? Also be really clear what you're trying to achieve. And also, what is each partner bringing to the table? Because that's so important. And I think where I've had partnerships that have maybe not worked as good as they should is because we haven't had the clarity on exactly who's doing what. Really, really important. And sometimes things don't work. And it's easy to say this, but when things don't work, it's always, what's the lesson that I've got from this experience? And I've learned some really big lessons from partnerships that haven't worked that have made future ones much more powerful. And I'd say don't be scared about doing partnerships, because you can achieve so much more working with other people than you can on your own. You've just got to take your time to make sure you find the right people.
Mm. Yeah, I think I agree absolutely with what's been said here, and I think that...
But Mike, they disagreed.
No, well.
So, are you big or small?
I
Are you
agree
in the
to
middle?
disagree and agree.
You're the Goldilocks, right?
But no, there's been some really good points here, and I think that the thing that I'd add to it without repeating is that there's a particular partnership that we're in, with right now, which is with a large organisation, and the secret to success of that one initially is that we had an internal supporter who was basically trying to bang our pots and pans for us. And so we spent 6 months, and we'd have these meetings each month going to it, going, all right, great, so what's happening now? Oh, well, I've spoken to this person, I've spoken to that person. Yeah, so how are we moving forward? And it was very slow. The thing that accelerated it, though, was when we actually got internal into the organisation. We started networking ourselves. We started building those relationships and sharing our story, because nobody else can share your story like you will. So particularly if it's a bigger company, get in there, build a relationship. Business is all about relationships. So I'd be encouraging you to, whether it's a small partnership or a large partnership, if it's just 2 business owners, get to know them really well. Understand their values. If it's a bigger organisation, find out who are all the decision makers. And by the way, LinkedIn will tell you who they are. And make sure you reach out and leverage those relationships, leverage that trust. And that, by far, has massively accelerated the speed at which that particular partnership is working at. Hope that helps.
It's really interesting because like whenever you go to any, like whenever I go on a trip or I go to any event, I'll always like have one intention, right? Like one intention of what I wanted to achieve. And when I was sharing about all the partnerships that we've created for the Genius Guides, for example, I'm a creator, so I'm not a deal maker. So I knew who I wanted to have as partners, but if I was to go drumming up the support, again, credibility is a really big part to this as well. So I remember when I went out to New York a couple of years ago, and I was like, my intention is to find someone who has all the credibility I need to actually create all the partnerships that I need, right? Because then, so they can make one call, and one call that's like, look, just do this. And then the guy's like, okay, I'll do it, right? I don't know who this Roger Hamilton guy is, but if you're vouching for him, if you're saying I should do it, I'm going to do it. And so I went there looking for that, and I was there for like 3 days on this big conference, and I couldn't, I was looking around to see if there's anyone, like, couldn't spot anyone who's the right person. It was 5 a.m. on the last day, and I still put it out there, and I put it out and just leave it there. And I was going down to get on the plane, and Janet Atwood, who wrote the Passion Test, who I'd known from before, and I hadn't seen her for a year or so, she shows up, and she's like, oh, Roger, I'm going to the airport, you come with me. We headed up on the airport together. It turned out we're on exactly the same plane. It turned out we're sitting exactly right next to each other. So we now had this flight from New York to San Francisco, where we're sitting next to each other, and I wasn't even thinking, oh, she's going to be my partner. I just started saying, hey, Janet, what's your big thing for the next year? Where do you want to head? What do you want to do? Right? And she was like, oh, I want to do more stuff in Asia. I go, oh, well, I'm in Asia. We should be doing stuff. She goes, maybe I should be, I'm sitting next to you for a reason. We spent most of that entire flight talking about, well, what things did she want to do? I want to have better systems. I want to have better marketing. And I was finding different things that I could immediately help her with in one form or another. And it was actually quite close to the end of the flight. She goes, well, what do you need help with? And I was like, oh, well, funny that. I'm actually in America because I've got this book coming out. And she goes, oh, we can do that. That's easy. I'll make all that stuff happen for you. And we ended up in this partnership where we're now bringing the passion test to the Genius U, so you can find out your passions as well as your genius, all those kind of things. And that all launches in the coming weeks. And on top of that, all of those different partners that you saw, the vast majority of all of them came from Janet just saying, people, you just have to do this, and making that happen. And so a lot of the times it is about not just even who the partners are, it's who's the team. Like we're talking about who's the team that's actually making it happen, that has the credibility, and to what extent do you know how you can serve them best? Not even for what you're going to deliver, but what do they want to achieve in life? Where do they want to go? And what can you do to help that? Because everyone always has a need, no matter how successful they are. And if anything, the more successful, the bigger the needs become. And so the more you can know what those are, the better it makes. I mean, it really means that they can see you care as opposed to be looking for something for yourself, right? But that's awesome. That's very cool. Okay, let's take another question. Whoa, more hands going up. Okay, we're going to take the gentleman right there who's standing there in the check. That's you. Yes. We've got a microphone coming around. Wow, you're taking a long route around there. Yeah. hand the microphone over if you need to. So it's really tight between all the tables, hey? I think we added some extra tables in here.
Hi, my name is Michael Dong. I'm a property investor. I'm doing quite well in the UK, but I see a opportunity that I can do a lot of things in Asia, in China, Hong Kong, etc. A lot of people coming here buy properties. A lot of UK sellers looking for overseas investors. My question is, how can I establish myself over there, and how can expand the business in a foreign country?
And this is for you to invest in there, or is this for you to go and find investors there?
For both, for finding investors and help them to come to the UK, providing a link between these two markets.
Do you want to share on that one, Simon, just in terms of on property?
Well, I know Michael because he's on my course, but and he's
Mastermind 15.
But by the way, give him a round of applause. He's an amazing guy. He takes massive action. But
thank you.
And the interesting thing, Michael, we talked about this because the UK is a unique place for property because we live on this little island, and the population's increasing, and guess what? They're not making any more land. And you know places like Dubai, they built the Palm Island. You all seen the Palm Island yet? Lovely. It's sinking, but it's lovely. But the thing is, that's not going to happen at Brighton. So no, it's not. I tell you, it's not even got a sandy beach. So the thing is, we've got this limited supply of space, increasing population, changing social demographic trends, and everybody knows London now. London is a great place to invest, but actually it's become quite expensive. And so I think the biggest thing, Michael, is working with some of the communities in other cities like Manchester and Birmingham that have Chinese communities, for example. So you speaking the language kind of helps. And working with people there, because the people there will know people back in the markets you're trying to tap into. And I think it's recognizing that actually, yeah, London, you can invest, but generally for the capital growth, you don't get a very good return here. And I think it's a case of going out and educating some of those people, because you and I know the way that Chinese investors work is different from the way we would work. And so it's looking to give that education at first to demonstrate your credibility and expertise rather than trying to sell to them. And I think if you try and help people and educate them, some will come back and say, that's really good, but you know what, we don't want to do it. Do you know anyone who can help us do this, Michael? And you can go, well, maybe I might know a few people. And then tap into your network here to either supply deals or get funding. So it's about giving to people first and then seeing what comes out of it.
Mike, you want to add something?
Yeah, I've actually got interesting stories I can share with you, which is highly relevant, and it's quite practical. Who here does business internationally? Okay, so we had a client come along to our session. He was the ex-CFO of the Foster's Group, so beer and lager and stuff. And he said, well, now I'm doing coaching to the C-level guys at the very high-level corporate finance. And he said, so I spent a number of years in Japan. So he said, I'm trying to build a business and get connections going over there, build a brand over there. So I looked at his profile and I said, okay, where's the Japanese language on your profile? And he said, oh, it's not there. And I said, well, if people are searching for you, your profile, you can design your LinkedIn profile in such a way so that you get found more often, more frequently. So what he did was we encouraged him in his professional headline, we encouraged him to have a statement in Japanese on the top of his he then he said, okay, that's a good idea, went away, did that. He came back next session, we said, so out of interest, who's got some success stories to share? He said, well, I've got one. And I said, what happened? And he said, well, I did what you suggested. You can see my profile. I put up the Japanese phrase. Had no idea what it said. And then he said, and I said, so what happened? He said, well, actually, a week after I did that, he said, someone in Japan from the Financial Times was actually typing in that they're looking for someone in the UK to write in their column. They typed in my phrase, and because your LinkedIn profile is when you have keywords searched, and most people's profile is dormant asset, it's dormant space that you're missing a trick on. So by updating his profile, making it relevant, the person in Japan who was searching for him found his profile, reached out to him on LinkedIn, and as a result of that, he then secured a column in the Financial Times in Japan. And on top of that, the next session he came back, I said, how'd it go? He said, even better now, they've invited me to be the MC of a major event in front of all my corporate audience. Yeah. So the thing is, I think what I love about what Roger teaches and about this whole concept around learning leader and around gold dust, you've got to make yourself attractive. And your LinkedIn profile for the corporate marketplace, you can have professionals that are on there. In Asia, unlike other platforms, Facebook and Google, etc., who've had trouble getting into China, LinkedIn has cracked the code there. So they're having massive growth in the Asian markets, and that's an area that they're putting a lot more focus and attention on. So I would encourage you to have on there all the different languages, phrase, keywords. What do you want to be found for? Have that in that native tongue language on your profile, and then design your profile so you're attractive to those people. And then there's some other advanced stuff I could show you on LinkedIn to actually leverage the networks when you find people, to find out who they know, to find out suitable investors. But that's for other stuff that we do. But hopefully is that useful?
Yeah, very.
And I think I'm just one addition. Again, we're all resources. Everyone's a resource. Everyone's got a certain level of success we've created, and parachute in on that. I mean, you could easily take, for example, what Simon's just launched, which is the whole crowd property side. You could say, well, the biggest challenge for people in China and others is like, how do they get into the English market, for example? I'm going to be the person who is going to be known as the one that actually aggregates people in China who've got money and show them the best way to invest in, and I'll be the middleman to help them to do that. And knowing that now they can be bringing money into Simon's network, I'm sure he'd be happy to do that. And then go set up, like with Mike's help, a crowdfunding in China group on LinkedIn and link them. Yeah. So like again, the most important thing is don't think you have to do it all yourself, but take the one thing you're great at. And here's the truth: for everyone in this room, one thing that you have which is really valuable is you're in England, you're in London. And for anyone who's trying to get into England, that's actually a really huge asset in itself. Just like when me or Shah go into America, we're kind of oddities. It's like, oh, look at that. There's someone from overseas who's coming in to speak to us. So that becomes one of our assets, is that they want to come to Asia, or they might want to come to Europe, or whatever happens to be. So know that location itself is a real value, which is awesome. All right, let's give him a round of applause for that question. That was great. Very cool.
Thank you.
All right, one last one. One last one. We're going to keep pointing out all the women who are jumping up and down. Look at that. No, we can do that. We're totally like over doing it on the male side on the stage, so I think we should balance it with the audience. Okay, so we're going to take final question.
Feeling very outnumbered. I can't cope.
Haven't you been feeling our feminine side? We've been, what, no? Okay.
It's not a setup. Hi, I'm Jing. Good afternoon. I have a question for Shah, really. I know when you started your company, you managed to get hold of one of the Dragon Den judges without going to Dragon Den. I think back then it was I just want to know, how did you manage that? And so you can leverage Theo's contacts and his expertise. So that saved up lots of your time and...
Okay, let me answer the question by hopefully expanding it to something that might help everybody else beyond Dragon's Den. So the question was, how did I reach out to Theo Paphitis, who's was one of the dragons on Dragon's Den? It was something I wanted to pick up from a lot of the things that Roger was saying about his plane journey with Janet, which is that when you pay it forward and you're constantly listening to how you can help people instead of constantly listening to how somebody can help you, when you go to networking events thinking about how you can... If you're listening to conversations thinking, oh, actually, I could help that person, instead of looking over somebody's shoulder thinking, oh, actually, where's the most important person in the room? Okay? When you do that, it's amazing what opportunities happen, whether it's on Dragon's Den or elsewhere. I had helped somebody at Oxford University with some judging. I wasn't paid to do it. It was just helping some of their scholarship students who were on an enterprise scheme. As a result of that, a year later, they asked if I'd be a judge on their annual business competition judging. Theo happened to be a judge. He happened to sit next to me. You know, I like a good laugh. Theo likes a good laugh. The pair of us, we got told off the entire time because we were just laughing the whole time. And we just generated a friendship. It took 2 years before I asked him to be part of Smarter. And then, by the way, as he's probably quite publicly documented, I stalked him because he kept telling me he didn't have any time. And I kept saying, well, I'm not going anywhere until you say yes. And so in the end, I did it very good-humouredly. But when you really want something, you need to be laser focused on it. But equally, you have no right to go after people and asking them for help if you're not the type of person who is prepared to volunteer it freely for other people.
Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Very cool. Words of wisdom, final words. If you had a chance to share just one thing with everyone before we part, what would that one thing be? Or you can kick it off.
Yeah, I'll give one quick one. Basically, I've nearly burnt myself out twice since starting my business, only in the space of a few short years. And when I look back to when I started, I thought I'd start my business around the stuff that I enjoy doing, which was helping businesses to be more successful, networking partnerships, number 2, and 3 was building and developing teams. 18 months in, the business was growing. I was taking more and more people and responsibilities and more contacts, and I was then doing finance, marketing, loads of stuff I didn't enjoy doing, wasn't very good at. Finally got to a point where I was so exhausted and couldn't work any more hours, wasn't seeing kids and wife enough. Had a bit of an intervention at home as well and some friends, that kind of helped. And then I kind of snapped myself out of it and kind of started again, remapped what my business should look like based on the growth we'd had, remapped it against what it should look like in 12 months' time, and started really building my team and surrounding myself with more of those good people. And you need to keep doing that, because as a business keeps growing, you need different people, you need more people. And you've got to be mindful of why you came to this in the first place. Remember, what are you good at and what do you enjoy doing? Don't lose sight of that, because you'll be very miserable and very tired. And some people don't come out of that. Luckily, I have. So that's my top piece of advice.
All right. Thank you.
Invest in yourself. That is absolutely crucial. Invest in yourself and invest in your business. And that means learning from experts. The one thing that I didn't mention about why my book was such a success was because a year before it was published, I made a bold choice to spend $10,000 attending a Tim Ferriss conference in California. that didn't include my flights and didn't include my accommodation. And actually, they had to interview me to tell me whether I was able to part with my $10,000 or not, whether I was good enough. But he promised that if you were good enough, he would open the kimono, which it was called OTK, and teach the audience, very small audience, 100 people, everything he knew about creating a best-selling book. 95% of my friends and family thought I was totally and utterly insane. 5% of them turned around to the other 95% and said, have you ever seen Shah work a room? Are you insane? They were slightly joking, but what they knew was that I take massive action. So if you're going to come to events like this, and you're going to make a commitment to yourselves to grow your business, to grow yourself, to develop as a human being and as a business owner, then you have to take action. You want to learn from experts and you want to invest in yourself. But if you do those things without taking the action that follows up, you won't get anywhere near the results that you are all capable of doing. So invest in yourself. Learn from the experts. Take action. And build a support network. Because it's your support network that will see you through the challenging times that every single one of us will have at some point. But in order to build a support network, you have to first make sure you are part of somebody else's support network.
Cool, thank you.
I think you have great, both comments already said. And on the theme of today, really, I think accepting that change happens, and either you stand still and you get left behind, or you embrace it and you move with it and do something about it. And I think just being here today, you know, lots of people are invited to this event today, and you've all given up your time, and valuing your time is one of the biggest tips I'd give you, because so many people don't do that. So what's the thing you're going to take from this to make a change in your business, in your life, etc.? Because it is about taking action. I agree also it's about making sure you're not necessarily working hard. It's about working smarter. And I see a lot of people, especially property investors, who are very busy doing all sorts of stuff they don't need to do. So my tip would be really focus in on valuing your time and what are the activities, the action you do need to take that's going to make the difference. And look forward, expecting your environment, the industry you're in is going to change, and you want to be ahead of the wave, surfing the wave, rather than crashing down and swimming.
Excellent. Well put. Yeah, I agree. And 2 bits of advice. Number 1, I think, is just put yourself in the place where success could happen. I think, you know, I've always just believed that if I remember it was a quote that you shared early on when we were hanging out, and you're saying, 80% of success is just showing up. So I thought, okay, fair enough. Go to UK, all right, fair enough. Go to Bali, okay, fair enough. All right, that's where it's going to happen. All right. So just show up to where the success, you stand a good chance of it, is number 1. Because if you're not there, you're not going to meet the people, right? And I think networks is one thing that's really stood out, is that you've got to be in the places where they are. So that's number 1. Second thing, a bit more practically, is we do a lot of talks on the topic of social selling. Is everyone familiar with that topic? I heard of it, but there's a study done by IBM where they studied over 3,000 buyers. And they basically studied these guys to find out how much of the decision-making process is completed before a buyer reaches out to a salesperson. Have a guess internally how much you think that is, but the studies came back, I've heard, between 60 to 80%. So that means that people who are after your products and your services, we've had 20 years of a behavioural shift that's occurred over since internet came about in the mid-90s, to all of a sudden social media coming about. We're now ingrained to jump onto these platforms. And you shared the growth rates before, Roger, about to produce a blog about it, about how companies like Apple, which has 164 billion in capital, they could buy some of the top social media companies and still have 31 billion left over. They've proliferated the world with these sort of mechanisms. So I think it's great of you guys to be here attending a workshop like this, because the stuff that you're sharing, Roger, is gold. And you need to start moving your business in that direction. And just think about that quote, 60% of the decision-making process is completed before someone will even reach out to you. So the next question you've got to ask yourself is, what are they finding of me? If I was searching for your company online right now, what would I find from you? how would I be able to decide if you were the right person to solve my problem, for me to purchase your products and services? So I think a big part of getting this right and being here at this conference is about setting yourself up for that. And it takes time, guys. I just want to say, it takes time. It's a journey. Just take it step by step. Keep up the good work. And, here you're in the right place, so well done. Hey, you're in the right place. There might be another place for you to show up again, who knows? But, just put yourself there and make sure you're preparing yourself to be found easily, because the world's looking for your solutions.
Very cool. Can we give all of our change makers a big round of applause? Thank you, guys. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. So you're going to have a chance to meet up with the changemakers as well, because they're going to be here. So we're going to do a couple of things, and then you're going to have a chance to connect up with the people you want to connect with as well. So one more big round of applause. Thank you, guys. Awesome. Good job. Come on out. Come on out. And thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you. All right. Awesome. Okay, so question. What would be one big takeaway? I mean, there was a whole bunch of things that showed up here. What would be a big takeaway from this session? Turn to the person next to you and come up with that takeaway. What would that be? And if you're watching this online, post that as well on the comment section, and I'll have a look at them afterwards. What's a big takeaway from this session for you that you can action? Go ahead. Come up with something.